nice. Awesome. Great job. Great job. Really, really impressed that you're just willing to go for all this. It's really cool. So, more examples just to reinforce these basic teachings about harmony and about arranging and improvisation and composition in a tonal setting. So let's take another example. Let's take some folk music. You know, like something like that might happen in Cape Breton music or Appalachian fiddle styles, for example. So I'm going to start with my inner voices, and I'm going to use this basic folky inner voice rhythm, which is run pony, run pony, run pony, run pony, right? This is a big one for Kentucky bluegrass, and they might use it in Cape Breton stuff too. I'm not really sure. I'm not super hip. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use notes from the chord stacks with voice leading, and I'm going to add run pony, run pony. So and then for my bass line, the bass line plays the root of the chord on the downbeat of the chord. And in this case, I'm going to follow the typical folk rhythm, and so it's just going to sound like root, 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 like that. I'm going to do it pizzicato, so let's see. And maybe you can do it with me. So ready? 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. D, D, A, B, B. More time. Nice. Now, just for fun, let's just add this little backbeat. So what I'm going to do to give you this is I'm going to add this little backbeat. The way I do it is if you just cover your strings with your left hand fingers, just like let your left hand fingers just fall over the strings, not pressing hard enough to get a pitch, but you know, having enough coverage so you don't play harmonics. And then can you do this windshield wiper thing? You know how to do a windshield wiper? Just press with your pinky down on the bow, kind of. So if you do that windshield wiper and you let it drop, you're not going to get much of a sound. But if you let it drop and also kind of pull away a little, and aim for 2, so you want to cover your strings with your left hand fingers. Just let them fall, yeah. And then aim for 2 strings. If you get the low strings, then it's going to be darker. High strings it's going to be. And then we're going to put it on 1, 2, 3, 4, on 2 and 4, like this. So go ahead and jump in on that. One more time. You can try to do double bounces if you want, or whatever, or like multiple bounces. Yeah, that's kind of fun. It's amazing how many teachers will ask me to come in and do like a 2-hour session dedicated to just that, and we just covered it in 40 seconds. So let's do the voice-led inner voices now. You can do one note, or if you want to be really, really challenged, you can go for double stops. So that's the run, pony, run, pony, run, pony. And by the way, I realize that if you're a bass player, you're like, why am I doing this? I would never have to do this in a real song, which is a good point, right? Same for cellos, like, because a lot of times if you're on the bass or in cello, you're playing a bass role, but it's still useful, I think, to be able to be in the role of the inner voices. Similarly, for violins, I think it's useful for them to understand how the bass role functions. Even though you wouldn't be normally playing the bass line all the time on a violin, it's still really good to inhabit all of those roles, because that's how we develop empathy, right? And it's the greatest virtue of a musician is to listen, just like maybe it's the greatest virtue of being a human being. So let's do run, pony, with voice-led chord tones, right? You can go for double stops if you want one. And so if you're in the bass or the cello, then play the inner voices higher on your instrument if you can, right? 1, 2, ready, go. It'll be easier at the tip of the bow for violins and violas. Tip of the bow. Cellos and basses, you can be in the middle. But if you play the viola or the violin, Do it at the tip of the bow. Great. So that's your basic inner voice rhythm. But we also have, with some of these styles, we have these fiddle bowings. Like we have something like, these kinds of things. I just want to show you some of those. We'll go with open strings. So we'll do. So bass, this is an open D, and then you can use the A on your G string if you want. And let's just see if we can get that going. Now you'll notice I'm keeping my bow on the string and I'm at the tip. Now if you're in the cello and bass, you might want to be more near the middle of the bow. So let's go for that. 1, 2, ready, go. Tip of the bow, violins. Now there's another example. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit for some of these other fiddles. So we'll do. Ooh, I don't like that. I don't like that. Try this one now. Can we try that one? 1 and 2. Now check this one out. Check this one out. Go ahead. Very nice. Once you know those three, we've got. Then you can put it with the chord tones, with the voice-led chord tones. So. And then that's pretty much how you come up with your inner voices on a bluegrass tune, right? Does that make sense? So we're always going to have these kind of two aspects when we arrange a song. We're going to have the notes in the chords, which is what you've got in front of you, the chord stacks, the notes in the chords. You're going to use the notes in the chords to come up with the notes that you use for the bass line, the notes that you use for the melody, and the notes that you use for the inner voices. And we have another aspect, which is the rhythm. So it's like, what's the rhythm of a bass line in bluegrass? What's the rhythm of a bass line in a waltz? What's the rhythm of a bass line in a swing tune? Or heavy metal? Or, hip hop? And what's the rhythm of the inner voices? And that's it. And if you separate it into those two categories, it makes it so much easier to think about and figure out. Because you'd be like, let's say there's a rock band and you're like, I want to figure out I want to arrange my own part for this rock band. Well, first of all, you want to find out what are the chords on the song? What are the chords in the song? And then you figure out what the chords are. You can make a chord stack for yourself, and so you can see that information. And then you want to figure out what's the rhythm. What's the rhythm that the bass would do on this rock group? What's the rhythm that the inner voices? By the way, what would be the inner voices in a rock band? Usually a rhythm guitar, right? Something like that, or maybe a keyboard. But you could also be a part of the rhythm, the inner voices in a rock band if you were creating a string section, which I do a lot of time. I've done I've created or arranged and recorded all the strings for a string section on my own in my basement, in my studio, for hundreds of albums and movies and commercials, probably some that you've heard. and even probably with some people that you've heard of. Like I was on one of like a Jessica Simpson record, you know, I was on a Dead Prez record. Like these are people that even you might know. So it was all because I had this information. I was like, well, here's the chords. So as long as I drag and drop these notes, this is a way that I can come up with the string parts. Cool. I think we're going to come back and do more with this, with the individual groups. But how are we doing on time? Is it getting close? I'm just feeling that it's close. Oh, we got a half an hour left. Oh, that's great. Do you want to take 5? Let's take 5 minutes, okay? I'll see you in 5 minutes.